The jungle moon was quiet, too quiet. Eli Grant groaned as he pulled himself out of the wrecked cockpit. His human scout ship had taken a direct hit above the planet's atmosphere and crashed hard into the trees below. Smoke rose from the twisted metal, and his arm was bleeding, but he was alive, and that was all that mattered. He looked up at the sky, orange clouds rolling with strange lightning. His cums were dead. No signal, no help. And worst of all, no clue where he was. The crash had fried his nav system. And this planet wasn't on any map he recognized. Eli checked his sidearm and emergency pack, then limped toward the nearest clearing. Tall blue trees swayed above him, their leaves glowing faintly. Insects hummed in the distance, some too loud, some too quiet. He had to stay alert. This wasn't Earth, and nothing here was familiar. He set up a small camp under a broken wing of his ship, using it as a roof. He started a fire and sat against the metal, trying to rest. That's when he heard it. Soft footsteps, slow, careful, not animal, not mechanical. They stopped just before reaching the firelight. Eli stood quickly, weapon raised, scanning the darkness. Nothing, only trees and wind. Then a faint blue light flickered in the trees, then vanished. He stood there for a long time. Gun pointed at the shadows, but no one came out, and eventually, he fell asleep with one eye open. The next morning, something had changed. A ration pack sat near the fire, alien design, silver wrapping, still warm. Eli looked around, but the forest was empty again. Someone was watching him, someone who didn't want him dead. That night, he waited, hiding near the edge of the firelight, and just before midnight, the figure returned, tall, armored, with a glowing blue visor. The figure didn't speak, didn't aim a weapon, just placed another ration pack on the ground and stepped back. Eli stood slowly, lowering his weapon. "Who are you?" he asked. No answer. The figure just turned and walked back into the trees, vanishing like a ghost. The third night, Eli didn't wait. He followed the figure's tracks in the morning. Through twisting vines and mossy stones, the path led to a cliffside cave, hidden behind thick ferns. Inside, the cave walls shimmered with old tech alien runes and faded energy lines, and sitting near a glowing rock was the armored figure. When she saw him, she stood. Slowly, Eli kept his hands raised, showing he meant no harm. And then, she reached up, touched the sides of her helmet, and removed it. Long silver hair fell over her shoulders, her skin was pale gold, and her eyes glowed faint blue. Her face was soft, beautiful, unlike any species he'd seen in the war files. And when she looked at him, there was no fear, only curiosity. Eli's breath caught, and without thinking, he whispered, "Gorgeous." She tilted her head, not understanding the word. He chuckled softly and pointed to his heart. "It means beautiful." A small smile touched her lips, the first smile he'd seen on this planet. "My name is Vela," she said, her voice quiet but clear. "Yours?" "Eli," he answered. "Eli Grant." They stood in silence, watching each other. A strange peace settled between them. This planet was dark and dangerous, but in that moment, it felt like something had shifted. Vela stepped aside and motioned for him to enter the cave. Inside, he saw pieces of tech tools, old weapons, energy packs, food. She had been living here, alone, hiding from something. He didn't ask questions yet. He just sat near the warm rock and took the food she offered. They ate quietly, her eyes never leaving him. There were questions in her gaze, and maybe in his too. But neither of them spoke more that night. Only the sounds of the jungle filled the silence. Outside, distant thunder rolled across the sky, and somewhere deep in the forest, mechanical footsteps echoed slowly, getting closer. Eli sat on the smooth stone floor of the cave, his body still sore, but his mind sharper now. Vela moved quietly around him, placing a small cube near the wall. The cube lit up, casting a soft blue light across the cave. The air smelled of moss, stone, and something slightly sweet, something alien but not unpleasant. She sat across from him, her armor now folded in. the corner like a protective shell she no longer needed. Eli studied her, her pale gold skin glowing under the blue light, her long hair tucked behind her ears. She didn't speak at first, just watched him carefully. Finally she said, "You are not like the others?" Eli raised an eyebrow. "Other humans?" She shook her head. "Other soldiers, other killers, you are different." He gave a half smile. "Not sure if that's good or bad." She tilted her head. "Confused. I mean," he said, trying again. "Thank you, I guess." Vela nodded, then looked down at her hands. "My name is not known here anymore. I was once Princess Vela of the Varan Empire." Eli blinked. "Princess?" She nodded slowly, her voice lower now. "My family ruled the skies of the inner rings until the Empire came." She told him her story, her words soft and broken at times. Her planet, once peaceful and rich with ancient tech, had been invaded by the larger galactic empire. Her father refused to kneel, so they destroyed the capital in one strike. Her mother was killed in the first wave, and Vela barely escaped with loyal guards. But even those guards turned against her when the reward grew large enough. Now, she was the last of her name, hiding in a cave on a forgotten moon, waiting for the end. Eli listened in silence, his heart heavy. He had seen war, but never like this. "You've been alone here all this time?" he asked. Vela nodded. "Many cycles, I counted them at first, but then I stopped." She looked up at him. "I saw your ship fall from the sky. I thought it was a sign." Eli chuckled. "I've been called a lot of things, but never a sign." She smiled again, and something in her face softened. He could see past the title, past the armor. She wasn't just a princess, she was tired. Scared, but still strong. "I need to fix my ship," Eli said. "But I can't do it alone." Vela stood and walked to a crate in the back, opening it to reveal spare tech parts, cables, small tools. "My people left many things behind when they ran," she said. "You may use what you need." He walked over and picked up a power cell, surprised. "This is old tech, but it might just work." They began working side by side, cleaning parts, connecting wires, replacing circuits. Time passed. The sun outside never fully set, leaving the sky in a strange twilight. They moved between the cave and the crash site, always watching the trees. Eli noticed how she never stepped out without her armor, always ready. "Why help me?" he asked one day as they climbed over fallen vines. Vela paused, looking at him. "Because you helped me," she said simply. The wreckage of his ship became a project, something to focus on, something that gave them hope. Eli showed her how human engines worked, and she taught him how to use her people's energy converters. They laughed when things sparked or exploded in small bursts. One day, she even touched his arm and said, "Your hands are clumsy, but kind." He laughed. "I'll take that as a compliment." At night, they sat near the fire, no longer strangers. Eli found himself looking forward to their quiet talks, their strange jokes. He learned that she liked the stars, especially when clouds rolled away and the sky cleared. "I used to fly between them," she said once, "before everything burned." But the peace didn't last. One morning, Eli spotted a shadow in the distance, a small black drone, floating just above the treetops. He pulled Vela inside the cave, his voice low and urgent. "They're looking for you," he said. She nodded, her face pale. "They never stopped." Eli checked his weapon. "Only 3 charges left. We need to hide," he said. Vela walked to the back of the cave and pressed a symbol on the wall. A hidden panel opened, revealing a tunnel. "Come," she whispered. "I didn't tell you, but this place goes deep underground." They gathered supplies and moved quickly into the tunnel. As they stepped inside, a soft light lit the path ahead. Eli glanced back once, at the cave they had made their home. Then he looked at Vela, and she looked back. There was fear in her eyes, but also something more, trust. As the tunnel closed behind them, the jungle above fell silent again. But now, they were not just hiding, they were preparing. The tunnel was long, cold, and dark, but the soft lights in the walls guided them forward. glowing like stars beneath the ground. Vela walked ahead, her steps light, her face calm. Eli followed, holding a small case filled with ship parts they had gathered. His legs ached, and his mind was full of questions, but he stayed quiet. They finally reached a larger chamber deep underground, a dome-shaped room with old stone walls covered in glowing symbols. It felt ancient, like the heart of something sacred. "This was built before my time," Vela said softly. "My ancestors hid here when enemies came." Eli set the case down and looked around. "It's beautiful," he said. "Safe, too." They built a small shelter inside the chamber using parts from the crash and supplies Vela had hidden. She knew every corner of this moon, every place to hide, every secret path. Ayla felt safe for the first time since the crash, but he also felt something else. He didn't want to leave, not just yet. Days passed slowly, filled with quiet work and soft conversations. Ali repaired parts of his Kun device using Vela's power cells. He showed her how to create a portable signal booster using old ship tech. She watched him closely, sometimes asking questions, sometimes just smiling. "You humans," she said once, "always building from broken things." Ili laughed. "That's all we've ever had." He looked at her and added, "But sometimes the broken things turn out better than the old." Vela looked down at her hands and said nothing, but a small smile touched her lips. They sat by the small heating unit every evening, eating rations and talking. Vela told him stories of her homeworld, of green mountains and crystal rivers. She spoke of her younger sister who loved painting the moons. Eli told her about Earth, about sunsets on beaches, dogs running in parks, old movies, and music. She was fascinated by the idea of music. "No one sings anymore in the Empire," she said, "not since the wars began." One night, Eli sang for her, just a simple tune his mother used to hum. Vela closed her eyes and listened, her head leaning against the stone wall. When he finished, she opened her eyes slowly and whispered, "It's beautiful." He shrugged. "I'm no singer." "You are," she said, to me. The bond between them grew, not with big words, but in quiet moments, in the way she touched his shoulder when he fixed something, in the way he waited for her before sleeping, in the way their eyes met and stayed just a little longer each time. Eli started to notice her more, not just her beauty, but her strength, her kindness, her courage. And Vela began to laugh again, a soft, sweet sound that echoed in the chamber. It had been a long time since either of them had smiled for real. Now they smiled every day, but peace never lasted long. One morning, while checking the signal booster, Eli spotted movement on the surface scan, a drone different from before. Stronger, faster, and closer. He showed it to Vela, and she tensed. "That's a hunter drone," she said. "They send those when they know someone is alive." Eli looked at her. "Then they know we're alive." She nodded slowly. "And they will come soon." They began to prepare. They moved deeper into the tunnels, found another chamber where Vela's ancestors once stored weapons. Most were old, but some still worked. She handed him a small energy blade. Eli grinned. "You trust me with this?" "I've seen you handle worse," she said with a smirk. They trained together. Vela showing him how to move silently, how to strike without sound. He taught her how to use a human pistol, how to reload fast, how to aim in the dark, together. They were stronger than they had ever been alone. That night, as they rested near the heater, Eli turned to her and said, "You don't have to do this alone anymore." She looked at him, eyes soft. "I know." She leaned closer, resting her head on his shoulder. For a long time they sat in silence. He didn't move, didn't speak, only listened to her breathing. Outside, the drone moved through the jungle, scanning, searching. But down below, hidden in the ancient stone, two souls prepared. They were not just a soldier and a princess anymore. They were something more, something stronger, and the Empire had no idea what was coming. The jungle above the tunnels was no longer quiet. Something moved between the trees, not natural, not alive. The hunter drone scanned every leaf, every shadow, its sensors sharp and deadly. It had no eyes, but it could feel heat, sense movement, trace sound, and now it had picked up something. Eli and Vela were deep underground when the signal alert buzzed. Eli checked the scanner, his face turning serious. "It's near," he said. "Almost above us." Vela closed her eyes for a moment, then opened them calm and focused. "We have to move," she said. "The drone is never alone. The Empire always sends more." They gathered their supplies quickly, wrapping food and gear into small packs. Eli took his pistol and checked the last power cell. 3 shots, he muttered. "Let's hope I don't miss." Vela grabbed her energy blade and activated the cloak shield around her wrist. "We go through the side tunnel," she said. "It leads to the cliffs. The drone won't track us well there." The side tunnel was narrow and dark, with roots hanging from the ceiling and moisture dripping from the walls. They moved in silence, every sound above making them freeze. Once, they heard a loud metallic sound, a crash. Then silence again, the kind that wrapped around the skin like cold air. Eli felt a chill crawl up his spine. He had seen drones before, but this one felt different, like it wasn't just hunting, but learning, thinking. "Do these things adapt?" he asked in a whisper. Vela nodded. "Yes, each one is smarter than the last." They reached a broken section of the tunnel where the ceiling had collapsed years ago. Light poured through a crack, showing the jungle beyond. But before they could climb out, a shadow passed above them. Fast, the hunter drone. Eli pulled Vela down, both of them holding their breath. The drone hovered near the crack, scanning, waiting. Then it moved away, but slowly, like it was unsure. They waited for several minutes, hearts pounding, then slipped out into the jungle. The air outside was thick, humid, filled with the smell of moss and danger. They ran through the trees, careful not to make noise. Vela moved like a shadow, her feet silent, her eyes sharp. Eli followed, not as graceful but steady. They reached the cliffside just as the first beam of red light shot through the trees. The hunter drone had found them. It fired again, missing Eli by inches, burning a hole in a tree. They dove behind the rocks. Breathing hard, Vela activated her cloak and whispered, "I'll distract it. You get to the edge and jump. There's water below." "What?" Eli hissed. "That's insane." She looked at him, her eyes fierce. "Trust me." Before he could argue, she vanished into the trees, her cloak making her nearly invisible. The drone turned, its sensors picking up a false signal. It followed her, shooting at shadows. Eli ran, dodging branches and leaping over roots. He reached the edge of the cliff and looked down. A river ran far below, the water dark and fast, behind him. The drone screamed as it realized the trick. Eli heard a shout, Vela's voice. Then silence. "No," he whispered. He turned back, ready to run into the trees, but then he saw her. Vela appeared from the side, limping, her shoulder burned but still alive. "Go," she shouted. "Now." He grabbed her hand, and together they jumped. The wind rushed around them. Then they hit the water, cold and hard. They sank deep, the current pulling them fast. Eli reached for her under the water, felt her hand, and didn't let go. They surfaced together, gasping. The drone screamed above, but it couldn't follow into the canyon, not yet. They floated to the edge and crawled onto the wet rocks, coughing. Vela's arm was burned badly, and her breathing was rough. Eli tore his jacket and wrapped her wound. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded weakly. "We made it." They sat there for a long time, the river rushing beside them, far above. The drone searched the jungle, confused and angry. Ellie looked at Vela, soaked and hurt, but still alive. "You saved me," he said. She gave him a tired smile. "We saved each other." That night, they hid in a small cave near the river. Eli built a fire while Vela rested. He watched her sleep, her face peaceful despite everything. He knew this wasn't over. The Empire wouldn't stop. The drone would return, and more would follow. But something had changed. They weren't just running anymore. They were learning, adapting, becoming something stronger. Together, they were not prey, They were survivors. The cave by the river was narrow, hidden behind thick vines and stone. Inside, Eli and Vela rested on soft moss, both of them exhausted. Her arm was burned badly, and he kept the bandage tight. Outside, the jungle remained quiet, but they knew the peace wouldn't last. The hunter drone was still searching, and the Empire wouldn't stop until she was dead. "I know a safer place," Vela whispered that night, her voice weak but steady. "It's farther south, near the ruins of an old Varan watchtower. They never searched there." Eli nodded. "Then we move at first light." By morning, they were on the move again, walking along the edge of the river and climbing steep rocks. The jungle grew thicker, and the sky above turned darker. Like a storm was building, bird-like creatures shrieked in the trees, and strange glowing plants lit their path. It felt ancient, like a forgotten world. They finally reached a tall stone wall covered in vines and moss. Vela pressed a hand to one of the stones, and a small door hissed open. Behind it, a narrow tunnel led them into an abandoned control room. Screens flickered weakly, and dust covered every surface. "This was once a watchpoint," she said. "My father stood here before the fall." Eli looked around, impressed. "Still standing after all this time," she smiled sadly. "Like me." While Eli searched for anything they could use, Vela walked to an old chest. She opened it slowly, revealing a long black coat and a metal crest. She ran her fingers over the crest, her family symbol. "I never thought I'd see this again," she whispered. But before she could close it, a voice echoed behind them. Well, the lost princess finds her crown." Eli spun around, weapon ready. A tall alien male stepped through the doorway. His armor cracked, but his eyes cold and sharp. "Theron," Vela said, her voice full of pain and hate. "I should have known you'd crawl out of the shadows." Theron smiled. "You always were dramatic." He stepped closer, raising his hands. "I didn't come to kill you, Vela. I came to offer you peace." Eli didn't lower his weapon. "You know this guy?" Vela nodded slowly. "He was my father's head guard. He betrayed us." Theron shrugged. "Survival, princess. The Empire made a better offer. You can still take it. Turn myself in," she said, stepping forward, "so they can parade me through the capital before killing me." Theron's smile faded. "They won't kill you, Vela. You're too valuable now. They'll use you." She looked at him with disgust. "I'd rather burn." Theron's eyes moved to Eli. "And what about the human? Will he die for you?" Eli stepped in front of her. "Try me." Theron didn't respond. He just raised a small device and pressed a button. Suddenly, the wall behind them exploded in fire. The drone had arrived. Eli grabbed Vela and dove behind the control panel, sparks raining down around them. "Run!" she shouted. "No," he said, pulling her close. "We end this." The drone entered the room, its red light scanning quickly. Theron vanished into the smoke, leaving them behind. Vela activated her energy blade, her hands shaking. Eli passed her a small detonator. "We still have the fusion cells," she nodded. Understanding his plan instantly, they moved quickly, dodging beams of energy and using broken walls as cover. Eli climbed to the upper walkway while Vela distracted the drone. She moved fast, leaping over rubble and striking with her blade. The drone turned, locked onto her heat signature, and followed. Eli reached the fusion cells stored in a sealed crate. He set the detonator, then shouted, "Vela, now!" She dove behind cover just as Eli threw a metal pipe at the drone. The drone turned its weapons toward him, but before it could fire, the fusion cells exploded. A massive blast rocked the tower, flames pouring through every tunnel. Eli was thrown to the floor, his ears ringing, his vision blurred. When the smoke cleared, the drone was in pieces, the fire still burning hot. He coughed and looked around. "Vela?" She emerged from the far side, limping but alive. They ran from the tower as it collapsed behind them, the old walls turning to ash. Outside, the rain finally fell, cooling the fire and washing the dust from their faces. Ele fell to his knees. Breathing hard, Vela knelt beside him, placing her hand on his chest. "You came back," she said, tears in her eyes. "Of course I did," he replied, holding her hand. "I'm not leaving you," that night. They sat under the shelter of a fallen tree, no fire, no talking, just the sound of rain and the warmth of each other. The betrayal still burned. But so did the fire of something new. They weren't running anymore. They were fighting back together. The rain stopped by morning, but the smoke still rose from the ruins of the old tower. Vela stood at the edge of the cliff, her burned shoulder bandaged, her armor cracked but still holding. Ele sat beside her, checking the last pieces of working equipment from the wreck. They had nothing left to run with and nowhere left to hide. But something had changed in both of them. "We fight now," Vela said softly. Staring into the jungle, Eli nodded. "No more running." She reached into her pack and pulled out the small crest she had found earlier. "This," she said, "is more than a family symbol." Eli looked at the strange lines glowing on the metal. "What is it?" "A key," she whispered, "to something very old and very powerful." They followed the river deeper into the cliffs. Vela guided them to a stone gate hidden by vines and moss. She placed the crest into a small slot, and the gate opened. With a deep rumble, behind it was a chamber of pure light, full of ancient tech and humming machines. "This is the heart of Varan," she said. "It was built before the Empire ever rose." Eli looked around, amazed. "And it still works?" "Yes," she said, "but it needs one more thing to activate, the blood of the royal line." Without waiting, she stepped forward and placed her hand on the glowing console. The machine lit up, pulsing with power. A deep hum filled the air. And from the ground, towers began to rise, massive defense systems, shield generators, and power nodes grew from the earth like stone giants. "The Empire will come," she said. "They always do, but this time they won't win." Eli helped connect old power cables, reactivating turrets and scanners. He worked fast, setting traps and loading weapons together. They turned the valley into a fortress. By sunset, the sky turned dark again. But this time, it was not clouds, it was a ship, a massive destroyer breaking through the atmosphere. It hovered above the cliffs, casting a red shadow over the ground. "They found us," Eli said, loading his weapon. Vela stood beside him, her blade glowing. "Let them come," she replied. Dropships fell from the sky, landing hard in the clearing. Armored soldiers poured out, rifles ready, scanners active. But the jungle did not belong to them anymore. The ground shook as the ancient defenses roared to life. Laser turrets fired from the cliffs. Energy barriers lit up with crackling light. Traps Eli had set exploded under enemy feet. Smoke and chaos filled the air. Eli moved like lightning, firing from cover, dragging Vela out of harm's way when needed. She fought like a true warrior princess, striking down enemies with silent grace. For every soldier that came, 2 more fell. But the enemy kept pushing. Then the hunter drone returned repaired, angrier, faster. It flew above the battlefield, targeting the power nodes. If it destroys those, the whole system fails. Eli shouted. "I'll stop it," Vela said, running toward the nearest tower. Eli tried to follow, but soldiers blocked his path. He fought through them, his energy cell running low in the distance. He saw Vela leap onto a ledge, the drone turning toward her. She raised her blade just as it fired, the beam slashing across her side. But she didn't fall. She reached the top of the tower and plunged her blade into the drone's core. A blast of light filled the sky as the drone exploded. Eli screamed her name and ran toward the smoke. She lay at the base of the tower, her body still. He dropped to his knees beside her, pulling off his helmet. "Vela," he whispered, "stay with me." Her eyes opened slowly, her voice faint. "We did it," she smiled. "The system is safe." "You're safe," he said, holding her close. The destroyer above began to retreat, its scans reading the defense network below. They realized this was no longer a target, but a trap. Within minutes, the Empire ships pulled back into the sky. Silence fell over the valley, smoke rising gently. Eli carried Vela back to the chamber, where healing pods still worked. He placed her inside, the lights blinking softly as the machine began repairs. He sat outside the pod watching her sleep. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for now they had won. And for the first time since crashing on this strange moon, he felt like he belonged. When her eyes opened hours later, the first thing she saw was him. "I knew you wouldn't leave," she whispered. "Never," he said, taking her hand. The stars above them sparkled through the open roof. The war was not over, but the princess had risen, and the human who once fell from the sky stood beside her. Together, they had made their final stand. The sun rose gently over the cliffs, its golden light falling on the broken battlefield below. The jungle was quiet again, but not with fear. This time, it was peace. Vela stepped out of the healing pod, her body still sore, but her spirit stronger than ever. Eli was waiting for her outside the chamber, leaning against a wall, his face tired but smiling. "You look better," he said, handing her a drink pack. She took it with a nod. "And you look like you haven't slept," he grinned. "I was too busy guarding a princess." They walked together to the edge of the ancient platform, looking over the valley. The towers still stood, humming softly. The Empire hadn't returned, and for the first time in a long time, the world felt safe, but it didn't last. A loud beep echoed from Eli's broken comm device. The signal booster finally catching a message. He opened it, and a voice came through, garbled but real. "This is the Varen Resistance. Responding to your signal." Vela's eyes widened. "They're alive." They activated the beacon fully. And within hours, ships began to appear in the sky. But these weren't Empire ships. They were old Varen cruisers, repainted and restored. Rebel forces landed carefully, stepping out with wide eyes. When they saw Vela, they fell to one knee. "My princess," their leader said. "We thought you were dead." Vela held back tears. "I almost was many times. But this human saved me." She turned to Eli, who looked awkward as all the aliens stared at him. "He didn't just save my life. He helped me fight. He helped me rise again." The leader stepped forward and saluted Eli. "We owe you a great debt." Eli nodded slowly. "I just did what anyone would do." Vela smiled at him. "No, not anyone, just you." Plans were made quickly. The resistance needed a base, and the fortress they had reawakened was perfect. Eli and Vela helped set up defenses, share maps, and train fighters. She was no longer just a princess. She was a commander, a leader, a symbol of hope. One night, after a long day of rebuilding, Vela sat with Eli by the cliffside. The stars above them were bright, and the jungle below was full of soft sounds. She looked at him and said, "What will you do now?" He shrugged. "I don't know. I was a scout pilot, not a war hero." She touched his hand. "You are to me." He looked into her eyes, the same eyes that once glowed with sadness now shining with strength. "I came here by accident," he said. "But staying, that's a choice." She leaned closer. "Then stay," he smiled. "I will." Time passed, and stories spread across the galaxy of a human who fell from the sky and stood beside a forgotten princess, of a moon once silent, now awake with power, of a new force rising against the Empire, not with fear, but with unity. Vela stood before her people, dressed in a mix of royal armor and jungle gear. Her voice was strong, her heart full. "We were broken, betrayed, hunted," she said, "but not defeated." She raised her hand. "This is not just the return of Varen. It is the beginning of something greater." Ele stood beside her, his weapon at his side, but his loyalty clear. They were different, from different worlds, different blood, but their bond was unshakable, built in fire, tested in battle. He was not just a protector now, he was family. The resistance grew, more ships arrived, more voices joined. Even whispers reached Earth. of one of their own helping to reshape a galaxy. Eli laughed when he heard that. They make me sound important, Vela replied. You are. Together they led missions, saved villages, and brought back hope. But their favorite place was always that cliff, that quiet spot above the trees, where the stars seemed just close enough to touch, where the war began. And where their journey turned into something beautiful. One night, as fireflies danced around them, Ailey looked at her and said, "When you took off that helmet, I thought I saw the most beautiful thing in the galaxy." Vela smiled softly. "And now?" He leaned closer. "Now I know I did." She took his hand and whispered, "Then don't ever leave." He pulled her close. Never. And above them, the stars watched silently, witnesses to the story of a human and an alien princess. Not just a tale of war, but of connection, courage, and love. A new beginning, not just for them, but for everyone.